because we're talking about the healing power of laughter.
Yes.
And when I wanted to get someone here to talk with us about that, Charan was the first person that came to my mind.
Well, laughter is very serious business. Yeah, right. No, it is. I mean, I love laughing. I think it's amazing. And like, I was thinking about this as well. Like, there's different ways people can grieve and process trauma and stuff like that. But I don't know if people realize that laughter is also a very, very healthy way to release and to process trauma, and so many of my experiences in my life, I can think of like spiritual experiences and just regular experiences in life have like had comedy and laughter at the center of it. So I'm a huge fan.
I've seen that, Charan. I know that recently, it was a few months ago, we got together. We live in different states. We don't see each other in person very often, but we got together. I remember we went to our friend Tyler's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were talking with Tyler, and we had like this like kind of really like profound spiritual experience together, all of us together.
Yeah.
And I remember we got done with that experience. I just thought, wow, like we had the spiritual experience. This is what life is all about, like having these experiences together. And then I remember we were walking out the door, and then you just dropped a dad joke on the way out the door.
I did.
And then we went to your house and watched this really silly sci-fi show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking at the end of the night, thinking like, wow, like I really appreciate Charan's example, because for you, like you were taking this just like, and you were just enjoying life and having fun with silly things and taking like profound spirituality and just interweaving that into one kind of way of approaching life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to be.
I can't emphasize enough the power of silliness and joy in life. I just cannot. I remember there was this time I was in Target. I was buying a roll of duct tape and 3 bananas. It was for a little shoot that I was doing. I work as an actor, and I was doing this little shoot, and I needed a roll of duct tape and 3 bananas. Don't know why, but I needed it. So I went to go purchase it, and I was at the conveyor belt going to go up to the cashier. For whatever reason, I'm like, duct tape, bananas, duct tape, bananas. Okay. So I put the duct tape down, and then I put the bananas like in a triangle formation around the duct tape. So it looked like some kind of weird like Star Trek symbol, or like some kind of weird, like, I don't know, like space symbol or something. Right. And I remember it went up all the way up to the conveyor belt to the cashier. He looked at it, then he looked at me, and I don't know why it hit his funny bone so hard, but he just lost it. He lost it. And like, he couldn't even breathe. He was like laughing so hard. He's like, dude, what is this? I'm like, I don't know, but I had to do this because at this exact moment. Right. And so he was just like, thought it was so funny. So then I came up with this game called Grocery Shapes, where the object of the game is you go to not self-checkout, but like when you go to like the actual cashier, from the time you put that bar down, you have to take all of your grocery items and make it into some kind of castle, some kind of shape in the time it slowly takes to make it all the way up to the cashier. And then you have to stare at them, and they have to stare at you as they dismantle your castle. And you can't avoid it. You can't avoid that there's a castle being dismantled in front of you. And it's just like so silly, but it's just something to break up the monotony. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that's what it is like people, they find it so refreshing when something is like so different out of the norm. And unfortunately, a lot of times I feel like people are too serious, or they take their lives like I don't know, like so seriously. Here's the thing. When we were kids, we used to play with cars and toys and stuff like that. And we would take it very seriously, right? We were like so focused on it. And we'd be very upset if those things were taken away, right? Now, as an adult, I don't play with those toys anymore. But I have other things that I play with. I got my cell phone. I got my car that I'm driving around. Those are still pretend things that I'm doing in this phase of life. When I get even older than I am now, maybe some of those things will go away as well, right? But I'm still kind of pretending. And in that pretend, sometimes you get a little too serious. You get a little too caught up, a little too carried away. And so I sometimes feel it a lot of fun to break up the monotony. And so I've done all these different things in the world and just in my own personal life to see how people can react. And sometimes people get a little, they're like surprised. They don't even know how to like respond. But once they give themselves permission to laugh, it's like the most healing thing to see. and they just it feels like their whole body is shaking, and they're just like letting go of like heaviness and trauma and all this stuff. So I don't know. I love it. I love laughter.
I love that so much. It makes me think of I'm reading a book called, it's called the Kunlun Method.
Okay.
And it's all about like meditation techniques that you can use to, just like level up your body and level up your life and things like that. And the author talks a lot about like laughter and smiling. Like he says, when you do these techniques, he used to recommend smiling while you do them. And even has his meditation technique where you go like, you like lean back and go like, ha, 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 and lean forward and go, he, he, he. And he talks about how, and ha is like one of the sounds that, you make.
Oh, wait, Josh, you froze up on me. Oh, shoot. Josh, I don't know if you can hear me still. I'm still here. I'm still laughing. I'm still smiling at your frozen face, but I can't hear you or see you. I can see you. I just can't hear you. This is awkward. This is very awkward. You know what? I hope this is part of the podcast. I hope this is going to be all part of the podcast, non-edited. Josh, you cut out for like a while. A long
I know.
while.
I could totally hear you the whole time.
Yeah, I'm so
sorry. Totally there. But you totally just like ran with it. And I think that's part of the thing is that when things go wrong, right? So like in 13 seasons, we're focused on creating solutions right now.
Yeah.
Which another way it says healing, right? You create solutions, you heal things.
Yeah.
Another way it says like solving problems, right? So these problems come up in our lives, and I think kind of like you're not taking things seriously. We try to take the problems seriously because if we take them seriously, we can solve them better, right? Yeah. Like we need stress to solve our problems. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times when we're stressed out, it just gets in the way of solving our problems. And if we can just laugh, we just kind of like you're saying, like laughter sort of separates us for things. It's almost like Buddhist.
We almost like observational rules sometimes,
Yes.
Like being so like stuck into the muck of it all, right?
Yeah. Then you laugh and you separate a little bit and you go, oh, I have new perspective on this.
Yeah.
Right. So like just now, our feed went weird and I wasn't on there for a second, and I was starting to panic and everything, and you were like, "Oh, I hope you leave this in here," and stuff. I'm like, yeah, me too. Like this is fun.
Leave it in. Like it's awkward. It's great. It's
great.
And can we talk about God in this podcast? Is that like
that's cool. We talk about God. So we try to go talk about God. God's great.
No. Well, I'm a spiritual person. I've always been a spiritual person, and I love like my relationship with God, and that's always been like a big center of my life. Now, here's the thing. I know for a fact that everyone, like whatever you choose to believe, like whether it's the universe or source or energy, whatever you want to call it, or call it God, it's a very personal thing. And whatever you find resonates most with you, that's what you got to do. For me, it's always been Jesus and Father, right? Like that just resonated with me, and I like that. So I just remember like many, many times in my life, experiencing God. And when I would experience him, sometimes people would be like, just like so reverent and so serious. And like, this is how we know it's God. It's so solemn and all this stuff. Not my experience. That has not been my thing at all. In fact, most of the times when I experience God, it's through insanely high levels of comedy, like just ridiculous, and like my whole life has been filled with that, like just ridiculous, hilarious moments. But he teaches me amazing lessons through the process while I can feel him laughing through his tears, because it's usually a joke at my expense, which is perfect. I love it. I would not have it any other way. But I remember there was this time I went shoe shopping. Okay. And one of the things that like I struggle with a lot is like sometimes making decisions on things like shoes, for instance. Like if it's like those, like, I'm like, I don't know, there's like so many different brands. I don't know which one I want. Right. And so I went shoe shopping, and I needed 3 pairs of shoes. I needed flip-flops, I needed dress shoes, and I needed a pair of tennis shoes. Now, before I even went inside the mall, I even said like a little prayer to God. Not that like I wanted him to like be like pick out my shoes for me, but more of like okay, here's the deal. You know how much I hate shopping. Like I'm just not a big fan. So if you could just make this experience easier for me, I just need flip-flops, dress shoes, tennis shoes. That's it. Just guide me where I need to go, because I just don't want to get like lost with like so many different choices and options to choose from. I go in the store, And for sure, like this, everywhere I look, like shoes were stretched out for miles, every direction. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. Okay, here we go. How do we do this? Now, the flip-flops and the dress shoes I found pretty quickly, but the tennis shoes, for whatever reason, I could not find a pair that fit me right. And I tried Adidas, New Balance, Nike, all the different kind of brands of shoes. And I was just trying shoes on, didn't feel right, walked around in it, put them back, went back and got another pair of shoes out. Women were walking by me looking kind of confused, but I kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was going for about 20 to 30 minutes, not finding the pair of shoes that I wanted. And finally, I raised my head to the heavens and I'm like, God, why? Like, why is this so difficult for me? I just want to find the pair of tennis shoes that just like that Cinderella moment, right? Like that just feel just right. When I put my feet in it, nothing feels right. And I kid you not, I heard his voice so clear in my mind. And the first thing he said was, Chan, I love you so much. All I want you to do is look to the right. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, look to the right. Like, and I was thinking, I'm going to look to the right and I'm going to see like this golden pair of shoes that are like, those are my shoes. Those are what I've been looking for this whole time. Instead, I look to my right and all of a sudden I see a sign, a huge sign. Like you could not have missed this sign, even if you tried. And it was about 20 yards away. And it said men's. And that's when I realized I was in the women's section trying on the entire time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And like, no wonder like women, like no one wanted to like say anything because like, he's foreign. Maybe he's like, I don't know. Like they thought I didn't speak English. I have no idea. Anyway, I felt so embarrassed. And like, I quickly ran over to like the men's section and I could feel him laughing and laughing. Right. Well, sure enough, I got to the men's section and like, wouldn't you know it, the very first pair of shoes I tried on fit perfectly. And I'm like, these are the ones I want. And I need to get out of here. But then through like this laughing and through this joy, you said, but Charan, like, don't you see like though, like if you're always trying to force something that doesn't feel right, it's never going to feel aligned. But like, you know, with me, when you find the right thing and it fits perfectly, that's when you know like, hey, you're in alignment. And so I got to learn this really cool lesson about alignment and not forcing things, allowing things to flow, but at my expense. And it was fun, you know? And so, but that's been my life. It's just been my experience, you know, just like laughter all the time. And yeah, so I just think that like, you know, there's all these different books on spirituality, being a guru, like, you know, like self-empowerment, improvement, all these different things. And I bet you there's so many different things at work. For me though, like something that's just so simple is just laughing, just having a good time. And like, just even in that laughter, I feel so much joy. I feel so much release. And it's not for everyone. There's some people that need to release a different way and they need to go through those processes. They need to make things like a work through, like a big, like a challenge type of thing. And that's exactly what they need. And I will never discount those things from them. But for me, I found that laughter did all of that very, very quickly. So I'm a big fan.
It's interesting because I was talking about that book and you talk about like spirituality and laughter. Mm-hmm. And the guy who wrote the book, he talks about how in this Kunlun method about how, you know, the crown, which, you know, the crown of the head is in many traditions is associated with like your connection to God or connection to heaven. Right. Yep. And he talks about how whenever you're laughing, mm-hmm. the muscles move in a way that like opens up your crown.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And he talks about how when like he just really encourages laughter a lot. I
love that.
And I think that I'm learning that more and more in my life recently, that when I like what you said, that, you know, different phases of life or different people, there might be a different approach, but I'm really finding that for me, the more I can just open up to laughter more, the mm-hmm. more I just feel my body like open up to peace and open up to God and open up to just healing and just like things feel less tense and life feels life with lowercase L becomes life with uppercase L.
Yeah, I like that. Life. I really like that a lot. That's awesome. Trying to think here, like when you're like saying that, like what was like kind of coming to my mind about like opening up the crown. I think that there is so many applicable things to that, right? Where there is a lot more life in you. That's the thing. I think sometimes in our lives, like we're always trying to go from point A to point B, right? we got to go do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. And for me, like one of the things that God always teaches me is about savoring the present moment, like getting more depth out of the present moment, right? Enjoying it, like nourishing it even more, right? It's kind of like, let's say you have a huge feast and you're going to eat this feast. Like, oh, I got to try this out and I got to try that out. And he says, hey, you have an infinite amount of time to experience this feast. So you could take one bite and just sit with that bite for as long as you want. Like, feel how it feels in your body. Feel how it feels as you're eating it and tasting every little bit of it, you know, and just like really nourish and experience that, right? I think laughter kind of grounds me in that moment, right? Because when I'm laughing, when I'm having a moment and I'm laughing, you know what I'm thinking about? Nothing else but that moment. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not like thinking of like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I cannot wait for my 401k to come through. I'm not thinking anything. It's ridiculous, you know? I'm right here in this moment, enjoying whatever it is we're having, right? So I think laughter is a great way of like immediately locking us back into the present moment where life truly happens. Because the future is always an idea. The past is a memory. You can't ever really exist in those places right now. You know, maybe in your mind you can, but not in your whole being, right? You exist right here, right now, and laughter helps bring that back into presence, I guess.
I love that so much. I love it so much. Okay, here's a question for you then.
Yeah.
So I know that both of us are familiar with Rex Ryan, and you on your you have your podcast. You want to tell us about your podcast for a second?
Yeah, for sure. So it's called the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and I've interviewed a ton of different people about their lemonade stand stories. So it's like business entrepreneurs, creators, actors, directors, like things like people have done in their lives to kind of propel them in their creation of their business or the creation of their life, right? And then we talk about lemonade stand stories, meaning when were times when life dealt you severe lemons, and how did you turn that into lemonade, right? And so I've done that podcast for a little bit. It's been awesome. And so Rex Ryan was one of the people that I had on the podcast. He's written some amazing books that you and I both have read and we've enjoyed a lot. He's been a spiritual mentor to me for quite some time now, and I've loved working with him.
So I recommend that podcast to anyone, particularly that Rex Ryan episode. I know I watched it and it really was really profound for me, like really, really profound.
Awesome.
But one of the things, so you connected me to Rex, and he and I have had a couple of conversations on the phone a few times. It's been really, really profound and helpful to me. And he's always asking people like, who do you be?
Yeah. Right? Who you be? Right. Who you be?
Which I love because I was actually talking with a friend about that very phrase last week, and the idea that he's not asking who are you or who will you be or who were you. He's using the infinitive. Be is the infinitive. It's infinity, right? Who in the infinitive, in the infinite sense, who you be. And when he and I were talking, he asked me that question. And I took a moment to think and like ponder and like ask God that myself, who do I be? And an image popped into my head of myself just laughing.
I love that.
I just saw myself. I was like my adult self, but I was acting like a kid, and I was just laughing and laughing and laughing. But the thing, and then he and I got talking, and he said, and I told him, I said, this is what I see when you ask me that question. He said, Josh, so do you be joy? Do you be laughter? Do you be love? And that resonated, like, yeah, that's who I be. But I don't feel like that's not this happened almost about 2 years ago. But I feel like it's something I'm like working at. Right. And I think of, I had an experience that's like stuck in my brain because it was such a big deal, where I was a kid and I was with an adult, and I was like, we were out in public and I was like walking like silly, like, I was walking like silly, and I think I was like 11 or so, or 12. So, I think to the adult I was with, I was a little too old to be walking that way. I remember the adult saying to me, don't walk like that. You're grown up now. Like, it's time for you to stop. And I've never forgotten that because it hurts so much. And I feel like for me, and it might, other people might be different, different people have be different things. Right. Yeah. But for me, like at the core, the infinite me is very interested in going through life with like this laughter, joyful kind of way, like that kind of energy, like this random, silly energy. Like that's like who I am. I think that's true of you as well. But I had that experience, and I grew up with lots of just heaviness. Like in my growing up, there was divorce among my parents, and there was mental illness among my parents, and just poverty, and just lots of really heavy things. And I'm like the oldest child, so I had to like step it up and like raise my sister, and so like there was just lots of heaviness going on, right?
Sure.
And I feel like for me, it's like I know deep down inside. This is one of the reasons I want to talk to you. I know deep down inside, I want to be that kind of person who just goes around being silly and laughing a lot. But there's like a part of me, it's like really hurt. It's always resisting it. It's like, hey, you got to be serious. You need to take things seriously. You can't do that. And there's a part of me, I think, that when we're laughing a lot, it connects us with others. And I think there's a part of me that's scared to connect with others, because when I was growing up, there were so many people that like hurt me. And so like connecting with others is scary because I might get hurt. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm working through that, and I'm trying to figure out how to be like this like laughing, joyful, silly person more often.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's actually really challenging for me. Like I feel a lot of blocks to let myself do that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering like what advice is so for me or someone in a similar situation, what advice do you have to learn to laugh more?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question. I mean, the truth is I think our lives are similar. I'm the oldest in my family. My parents went through a divorce as well, and there was a lot of heaviness. I was raising my younger brother as well, and I felt like I was a mediator for my parents, because my parents, they fought, and then after they had this initial fight, for 6 months, they never spoke to each other unless it was through me. I was 12 at the time, and so it was like, hey, Charan, tell your dad this. Charan, tell your mom this. And my mom wanted to get divorced. My dad did not want to get divorced. So I had so much pressure, and so much like a feeling of like, if I don't come through, my family's going to fall apart. It's all on me. Now, of course, that belief is not accurate, and I mean, it's how I was feeling. But the truth is a 12-year-old never should have had to feel that kind of weight or that kind of responsibility. Right. But I did. And my life, like my childhood growing up, I was not who I am now. Like I wasn't silly. I was serious. I was very serious. And I was also very, very shy. I was very shy. I was serious. I was self-conscious. And I didn't feel worthy of friends, honestly, and love, because I failed my family. I let them get divorced. Do you see what I'm saying? Like I had these thoughts in my head that were actual blocks. And I remember I was in my 20s, and a lot of those things, had passed. And I just kind of said, oh yeah, I was a kid. I don't have those thoughts anymore, because I was a kid, until I started dating in my 20s. And all of a sudden all these things came up. And when I remember I was dating someone, and she was, it just wasn't going, like our paths were misaligned and it wasn't going great. And she felt like we should probably end the relationship. And I remember at that moment, I was so desperate to cling on to it that I was like, I'll change myself. What do you need me to do? What do you need me to be? What do you need me to say? Because I thought that's what marriage meant. It meant completely letting go of who you are, who you think, and then like in order to please somebody else. So I lived a life of inauthenticity. Wait, I don't even know how to is that inauthenticity? Yeah, I think that's what it is, right? I was very
inauthenticity.
The end of it. That's what I was living, I wasn't living truthful, not to myself anyway. And it's been a process, honestly. It's been a real process. Like part of getting into acting was great, because it allowed me to feel like I was me. Okay. So I want to share a little bit about how I got into acting, because I think this is going to loop right back around to like, how do you be more joyful and how do you have more fun? Okay. I was going to school. I was going to BYU, and I had no idea what I wanted to do for a major. My relationship had failed, and I just was very confused. Right. And I was hopping around major to major, and I would go to class And I remember it was my second semester at BYU, and I was and this accounting 210 class. And I thought I was going to make myself a business major because I'd convinced myself like, oh, that's a logical thing to do. Then then I can get like a really good business degree, and then it will allow me to get all these different accolades and yada, 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 right? I'd been convincing myself for so long, like this is exactly what I wanted. And I remember going to class that first day, and I felt like I wanted to die. Like I felt like my entire soul was being sucked out of me. And I was so exhausted. Like there was just no life in me. And I came home so defeated. And thankfully I had a friend whose dad was like kind of a counselor type person. And he's been like a father figure to me. And he said, Charan, maybe this means that you're not meant to be in business. Maybe that's not where your soul like truly finds joy. And when he said that, and when he kind of like gave me permission to say, oh, maybe I don't have to do this, it was like this flood of joy and relief came into me, And I'm like, oh my gosh, this was incredible. Like this feels so good. And then it was like a path of navigating and figuring out, well, what do I really want? What do I not want? And stuff like that. Well, fast forward to 2004, it was 2004 summertime. And I had also kind of gone through like another bout of heaviness and depression and things like that. But in those moments of depression, it was actually fantastic because it forced me to face myself. And I remember thinking, okay, when I get old and I look back on my life, if I regret anything, what would it be? And I remember thinking instantly, well, if I never give acting a shot, I would regret it. I'd regret it. So then I thought, well, why haven't I given it a shot? And then I realized, oh, it's because I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to fail. I was afraid that it just was not going to work out for me. And then I thought of how much of a hypocrite I was because I was constantly telling other people, you got to go live your dreams. Like God will help you. God will bless you. But when it's me and my dreams, I'm like, I don't know if God can do that for me. Like, why would he want to do that for me? And I was like doubting and all this stuff. Right. But that day I remember where I was laying on my couch and it was summertime. And I said, that's it. I'm going to be an actor. And I just said it out loud. I said it out loud. And the moment I did, my entire body felt like it was on fire. Like it just exploded. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like even just declaring it caused me to have so much joy within myself. Right. And then the very next day, a friend of mine, like a family friend of ours who I haven't talked to in a while, she calls me out of the blue. And now she's my mom's age, like friend. Right. So for her to call me was like kind of surprising, but cool. And she called me and she's like, Charan, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but I have to tell you that you have to go live your dreams. I'm like, what is this? What do you mean? And she's like, I just keep feeling like you have to go live your dreams. Like you have to. And I'm like, okay, all right. Eerily weird timing. And then more and more things kept happening over and over and over that kept reiterating to me, go do this, go do this. I remember going to church that Sunday and every single talk and lesson was like, go live your dreams, go follow your talents, all this stuff. And then even at the very end, when I was leaving church, I remember like being so excited. And because like, I just kept like, the more I kept thinking about it, the more joyous I felt. This guy comes up to me. I've never met him before. He's like a Hispanic dude. And I've seen him around and he's like, hey man, I got to ask you a question. I'm like, yeah. What's going on? He's like, this is going to sound so weird that I ask this, but have you ever thought about being an actor? Like, you have got to be joking me. Like, what is someone spying on my brain? And like, I don't even like what's going on. Right. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, why would you like, how? Like I said, I decided just this week, I'm going to be an actor. And he started laughing. He's like, no way. He's like, look, I am going to be a director. I'm studying directing at school. And I just think you're so funny. Like you just have like funny comments and all these things. I would love for you to be the star of the short film that I'm going to write. And I'm going to direct it. And I want to like have you be in it. So I was like, that was one of my first gigs and I loved it. And it was such a joy and it was so awesome. Right. And I noticed something very, very clearly. And this goes back to what you were asking about joy and whatnot, which is that when I had declared it, when I just said, this is what I'm going to do, like it was my soul's decision, right? I was deciding it and not other people were deciding things for me. Does that make sense? Like that was when I knew it was an authentic choice because I decided it. I wanted it. But a lot of times we're living our lives, we're like walking through and we're like kind of like happy, kind of, whatever. And we're not like living completely full. We're not completely alive. And it's because we're living a life that other people told us we should be living, if that makes sense. We did not choose this path. Like, we didn't actively say yes. Now, other people can suggest things, and it could be us saying, yes, that is exciting to me, and that's what I want. Then, yes, you're owning that choice, right? But a lot of times people aren't owning their choice. When I owned my choice, guess what? The heavens opened up, the universe opened up, whatever you want to call it, and flow was happening, and I started getting gigs. Now, there were definitely hiccups along the way. I definitely fell flat on my face a bunch of times, but I kept going. And in the end, like, I can actually say I make my living as an actor, and that makes me very excited to say, because it's like, oh my gosh, like, not many people can say that. Not the acting part, but that they chose this life, and that's exactly how they're making their living, and they're super stoked about it because this is what they wanted to do, right? So when you go back to your life about what's kind of blocking me or like connecting me or like feeling with joy and things, look back and ask yourself on all the decisions that you're making right now, all the choices and whatnot. And look, there are things to be said about like, hey, I need to like be responsible. I've got to take care of my family. I got to take care of my kids. That, of course, let's set that as a baseline. But then also ask yourself, the choices that I've made in my career and all those things, was that my choice? Or was this like, well, I guess is what I have to do because I got nothing else going on. You know what I mean? Like, was it something that you really, really, really wanted to do? Or do you feel like you're just kind of pigeonholed and forced in that corner? Now, here's the deal. Sometimes when I was acting, I had to get little side hustles and things like that, things I did not want to do, but I was doing it because it was paying my bills. And there was a phase of life when those were things that you just kind of had to do while you wanted to pursue what you were pursuing, right?
Yeah.
With me and acting, it's been a very interesting relationship because I had certain expectations of what I wanted it to look like. And when it was like that, it would never look like that. Things just did not work out the way that I was thinking it was going to work out. But when I just kind of went with a general phase of, hey, I'm going to be an actor. Don't know what that's going to look like. Just going to go for it. Then the way it unfolded before me brought me a ton of joy because I didn't have any expectations of how it's supposed to be rolled out. Like I wasn't trying to write the outcomes, right? I had it. I had a direction I wanted to go and I went for it. And then I felt God just blessed me and like gave me opportunities left and right along the way. Moving to LA, got to do some cool shows there. Again, flow. And then I also felt like, hey, it's time for me to leave LA and go do other things. Again, flow, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that back to your question about finding true joy and being able to laugh and be silly and not care about what other people think. I'm really sad that you had that experience with that adult figure who told you, hey, walk normal because you're not, you shouldn't be silly enough to like walk like that.
It hurts so bad. Like, I don't like fault them. Like, I get that they were looking out for me. Like, they were saying, hey, you're getting older now. It's my job to teach you how to, how to behave. Like they were trying to be helpful, and they were probably also embarrassed a little, right? Like they're like, yeah, I was embarrassing them because they thought that's not the way you're supposed to act in public, right?
It's so funny. My dad sometimes does the same thing to me still, he's because I can tell like I'm an embarrassment sometimes, and he's like, Charan, do you have to always be so silly? Actually, I do, because I know it's bothering you and I have to, but I laugh about it now. But I laugh about it now because I'm so comfortable and happy with myself, right?
Yeah.
That I'm free to do that. Now, when someone says whatever, I'm like, okay, well, hey, I'm sorry you hate your life so much. That's not on me, but that's the thing, right? And but I'm really sorry that you went through that because that is hurtful.
Thank you.
That is hateful, and you feel like this sense of like shame and that's the worst.
It's such a small thing that's like I've never forgotten because it hurt, which I think is just actually I see as like a positive thing because the fact that it stuck with me so much, I've never forgotten it, is a sign to me that it was a big deal, which is a sign to me that it was going against who I am, right? So it actually helps me discover who I be.
Yeah,
right? It would if it didn't conflict with who I be, it wouldn't have been hurtful.
Yeah,
and then it wouldn't have stuck, and then it it wouldn't serve as a signpost to help me figure that out now. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really neat. But yeah, I like what you're saying. What I'm imagining, you're talking about like career things, right? And I think what you're talking about definitely applies to career things. I think sometimes though we might get so like when it comes to manifesting things, right? Or bringing about our lives. Sometimes when people talk, well, I want to manifest this for my life or create this in my life, we instantly go to like, how much money I'm going to have, what kind of career am I going to do? Like what kind of relationship am I going to have, like a partner, right? Those are places we go right away. And boy, are those important because those things have a big impact on what we're doing every single day. So like
in this world,
a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At the same time though, how often do we use these sort of manifestation tools or spiritual creation tools to just like on our personality?
Yeah, man. You know what? I'm glad that you're bringing this up because this was something that I've been thinking a lot about lately regarding like just creating your own life and all that stuff, right? And when I talked to God about this, I got like a very interesting response. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'll tell you the response. I was gonna go for an awkward time and not tell you what it was just to see, but I'll tell you the response. No, I got a very interesting response.
Thanks for making me laugh, Charan.
Yeah, I'm healed. No worries. You were healed. Blessings to you. No, what it was interesting when I created, like he says, hey, those methods of creating your life, like vision boarding and manifesting things like that. They're super powerful and they do work. Like you can go inward and you can create this life that you want, right? Mm-hmm. And then he'll like manifest it and like it'll show up in your life in some capacity in some way. And like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. Like I manifested this boat, I manifested this car, and yada yada yada. But he then says this. He says, but the problem, there's a couple problems. One, very rarely do we manifest what we really, really want. Because what we really want is to feel joy. We want to feel fulfilled. And we think that car is going to fulfill us. And maybe it will for a second, maybe it will for a season, but it's not going to be the end all be all, right? It might temporarily like help us and make us feel good and happy and all this stuff. But it's like a very fleeting thing, right? And sometimes it comes with a whole host of other problems that you didn't expect, right? So yeah, you may have gotten the car, but along with the car, you got a lot of mechanical issues that come with that car, and you got a lot of expenses that come with that car. And oh no, I've got insurance to pay now. I've got car payments to pay now. And you're like, crap, like what I wanted also brought with it a whole host of other burdens, right? What we want is to really feel joy. What we want is to like really feel alive. And then we can get, and hopefully sometimes material things will represent those things for us, right? And then the other thing he said, like with manifesting, that's also kind of like limiting, is when we spiritually create things, we're always going to be limited by our own imaginations. So if we can't imagine something greater, then we're not going to get something greater, right? It's about like what we have that ability to imagine. And so he teaches me when I manifest or when I create with God himself, when I'm doing it that way, co-creating, right? Two things happen, big things. One, he fulfills me right then and there. Just by being with him, I feel fulfilled. And that fulfillment brings me joy, like so much joy, right? That is the foundation. That is the baseline. And the cool part about that is because that is my baseline, suddenly my wants completely change. Because I was initially looking at the wants, my temporal wants, as something to fulfill me, right? I have like this attachment, this idea that I need that car. That car is going to give me a sense of identity. I need that big house. That big house is going to give me a sense of identity, right? You were looking for identity in the things that we're manifesting, but God gives us fulfillment and identity with him right then and there, and it's so complete. So imagine like before you go outside of your house to go accomplish your goals, you're already fulfilled. You're completely fulfilled before you go outside. Now life becomes a way different path for you. Now you just want to create for the joy of creating, serve for the joy of serving, right? You want to help and you want to share abundance with the world. And then he also says, when you're co-creating with him, not only do you feel fulfilled and joy right then and there, but he can help you imagine way greater things than you can imagine on your own. So then the outcome becomes way better. Now, sometimes I like to take it a little further and I ask for the Christmas surprise, which is, hey, I don't even care what shows up. Just surprise me. I'm just so stoked to be with you. And I know you know my needs. Surprise me. I'm just excited to see what happens. I'm like a little boy on Christmas Day waiting to unwrap the present and be like, oh my gosh, I got this whole thing or that whole thing. And then it's not a matter of like, oh, am I getting this physical thing or that physical thing? It could be like a spiritual thing. It could be a mental thing. It could be whatever it is, right? So I think there's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different ways to like manifest things. But for me, being at the foundation of joy and fulfillment already before I get some outwardly result, I think that's key. And, you know, I learned about this. I had a really interesting experience while I was at school. See, and it meant a lot to me because, see, when I was growing up, I lived in a household where grades were considered super important. I had to get straight A's. If I didn't get straight A's, I would get hit. And there was like this real fear if I did not do well in school. So it was all based off of performance, right? And I was never enough. I was also never enough. Well, when I went to college, I remember there was this one day where for whatever reason, I just bombed my tests. I bombed my tests. I bombed my assignments, all this stuff. And I was going back to my car and I should have felt dejected. I mean, my whole life, if I had bombed tests or bombed this or bombed that, it would have been the end of the world, right? So I should have felt so defeated and so sad, except for the fact that I didn't. I felt joy that day. And I didn't even know why I felt joy, but I did. And I'm like, what? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. I should be feeling so miserable and so sad and so depressed because I had a lousy day at school. But the circumstances did not match the mood and the feeling and the spirit and the joy that was in my heart. And that like really set me on this path of realizing, oh, my future does not have to be determined by like I don't know, like my circumstances do not have to define how I'm feeling, if that makes sense, right? And so then I'm like, oh, then what I really want is joy inside. Because imagine, like I tell people this all the time, like what's worse than having none of your dreams come true is to have them all come true only to realize you're still unhappy. You know, It's a terrible feeling because you've been working so hard, you've chased so hard, you got all these things, you got this money, yada, 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 and you come home and you're still freaking empty. And that sucks because then you're like, now what? You know, now what? So I really believe that what we want is to feel that fulfillment and that joy inside. And that fulfillment and that joy for me comes not from any outside thing. It comes from my relationship with God that I find on the inside, which is eternal, which you can get to in a moment, right? Mm-hmm. And so that, I know it's like a roundabout tangent that I went, kind of like that guppy analogy in the beginning, but take it, run with it, you know?
Yeah, I really like that. I think that what it makes me think of, I think you're aware that a couple years ago, actually the same time I was talking with Rex Ryan about this stuff, I went through a really hard financial period where I was unemployed and trying to figure things out. And I remember I kept being, for this, the part, I just wanted to survive, right? I just wanted to solve my financial problem as quickly as possible and not feel scared about that. And so I remember I just kept having these experiences where God would lead me to call certain people to talk through it. And I'd call these people. And I remember you were one of the people I felt led to call. And there were some people I felt led to call, and I would call them and I would be like, all right, I'm going to talk to this person. And by the end of the call, they're going to like present me some opportunity, you know, where I'm going to have like, at the end of the call, I'm going to have a job because of this conversation. And I kept calling these people. And like I said, you were one of them. And then these people ended up, they didn't have any solutions for me in terms of actually like helping me find a job, but they all had like advice for me about how to have joy in that circumstance.
Yeah.
About how to, you know, be okay with being unemployed and just have joy, not wait to have joy until I solve my problem.
Yeah.
And things are a lot better now. And, you know, I am, you know, employed now. But I learned from that experience that to be, you know, like for a while during that time, if my kids walked up and said, hey, let's play together, I'd be like, no, I'm just too sad to play. Sorry. Like I'm too worried about our transition to play. I'm sorry, you know, which isn't good for them because then they're feeling that heaviness, you know. But during that time period, I learned to get to the point where I was like, I don't know how we're going to eat in 7 days, but I don't care. Let's play.
Yeah.
And that was really important for me to learn that. And so, sometimes we want so much to get all these external things figured out in our lives and to use, like spiritual tools to like create all that. And that's awesome. And that can work. But even better than that is using these same tools to like create our inward state so that we can just be joy wherever we are. And so, yeah.
I remember in 2014, like I was also one that like struggled with finances, right? And being an actor does not like, it's a very, very, very fickle road as far as finances go, because you have no idea when your next paycheck is going to come through. It's kind of stressful, right?
Yeah.
But it was great as well because I learned how to live in a very unpredictable, uncertain state. Now, here's the thing. If I was married, if I had kids, all those things, then this might be a very, very different conversation. But I wasn't. I was single. I'm still single. So it was fine, right? And I remember I was in the middle of a lot of things. Like it was in 2014. My brother was having some really severe problems with drugs. And so I was trying to help him out and trying to take him to like rehabs and stuff. The apartment that I was living at was just not a good situation for me in California. I needed to move. So I'm moving, trying to help him with all of that stuff. There were just so many things that were going on in my life. And I remember coming home and I was so afraid to look at my bank account. I was just so afraid. I hated that feeling of like, I don't even want to look at this. I don't want to look. And I looked and I had like less than $200 in there. And I'm like living in California and I had no idea when my next paycheck was coming. And I was stressed out of my mind, And I remember this day very clearly. And I used to drive for a Lyft. And so I had my Lyft app on and then I had my computer open and for 8 hours, like I and I was already mentally exhausted. I was helping my brother out with all of this stuff. I just barely moved in, but for 8 hours, I just spent poring over computer, like looking for like computer jobs or like online jobs, like Craigslist, like what's offering on Craigslist. And I spent so much time. And in that 8 hours, I had given one ride, just one, and I made $20. And I'm like, I made $20 today. And I've been searching and stressing, like, what am I doing right now? What am I doing? And I remember that night I was going to say a prayer. And as I was going to pray like praying for like, God, where's my money? Or what's this? The prayer actually changed the moment I started to pray it, if that makes sense. Like the moment I started to say the prayer, I stopped and thought about my whole day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been making money my source of life. I needed money. I needed money to survive. And I was like, I don't have money. And I kept thinking money, 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 money. How do I make more money? What job should I do? Should I do this job? Should I do that job? I was making money my life. And I thought, oh my gosh, like money's not the source of my life. It's God. It's always been God. And so I said, I am so sorry. Like this whole day, I've been panicking. I've been stressed out because I've been making money my life and not you. And I apologize for that. And I remember him so clearly. And again, comically, he's like, hey, Charan, buddy, just wait till tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Like, and it was just like a weird, like, wait, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, just wait till tomorrow. Go to bed. Have a good night. You've been stressing. Just relax. And I'm like, yeah, but like, can you give me a hint? Can you give me a hint? Like, what's going to happen tomorrow? I'm not. He's like, just go to bed. So I went to bed and it felt good to sleep. And I woke up the next day and I'm like back on my computer, looking for like different jobs. And then suddenly I stopped. I stopped myself and I'm like, wait, no, just wait. And they said, you told me, God, like that if I just waited till today, like something was going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen, but you're the source of my life and not me. And as I'm saying these things and I'm praying out of the blue, I get a message on my Facebook Messenger from a buddy of mine that I haven't talked to in years. His first question was, hey, Charan, this is going to sound so random, but what are you doing for work right now? And I was just like, what? Like, wait, what? And then he's like, look, I work for this company and we need people to test out commercials on like different computer servers. Like we have a company that like sends like all these like 15-second commercials, 30-second commercials, and their jobs are just to like watch these commercials and see if there's any bugs, if there's any glitches, if you watch it from one machine to another. And so your job is to like break the commercial, like refresh it and all these things. It's a super simple job, but I need people to do it. And the pay is $25 an hour, and you work 10-hour shifts. And most of the time, you're not even testing the commercials because the commercials aren't even coming in. You can watch movies, you can hang out, you can play whatever. You just have to hang out here in case the commercial comes. And so I'm like, dude, I'm in. I'll do it. And in 2 weeks, I had like over $2,000, which was a lot for me at the time because it was like I had nothing before, you know. Mm-hmm. And there was another moment where part of the reason why I couldn't even work as an actor was there was like this issue with my contract that, and I was trying to switch agencies. And so they said, in order for you to get out of the contract with your old agent and go to a new agent, you can't work for 120 days as an actor. So I had to stop working for about 4 months as an actor. And so funny enough, I booked a movie right after that 2-week stint. I ended up going back to Utah to film this movie, and it happened to fall on the 120th day that I was shooting. Okay, I mean, can you think the timing is insane when I think about it? And I was shooting that evening, so I called the offices in the morning. I said, "Hey, you guys said 120 days. If I don't work on a job, you can get me out of the contract." And they're like, "Yep, that's right. So we'll get you out of the contract." So they got me out of the contract, and I was able to work that job in the evening. No, and no worries. Then I came back home from that job. My friend randomly calls me, who lives in Hawaii, and says, "Hey, Charan, I would love to fly you out to work with me on a job here in Hawaii." So I did that job there. I flew out to Hawaii for all places, did that, got enough more money. Then I came back, and then I get a phone call from HBO, and they're like, "Hey, we loved you on the show last year. We want you back on." So I did the show for HBO. And then right after that, I did a Wendy's commercial that just suddenly came in my life. And I went from having like hardly any money in my bank account to having like a really healthy bank account for me anyway, in a matter of months. None of those things I planned. You know what I mean? Like none of those things I planned. They just flowed, boom, 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 boom. And then God again came back to me and said, "See, I got you." And gosh, it just made me melt. It just made me melt to think like how much he cares about me and my struggles, my financial struggles, and like worrying so much. Oh my gosh, I'll never make ends meet. But I realized I just have to shift a little bit. Instead of making money my life, I have to make him my life, make God source my life. And as I did that, boom, everything else just kind of lined up. All my needs were met. All of them were taken care of, right? So kind of going back to you and your circumstance, like back then when you were struggling financially, like it's so cool to see that when you discover joy for yourself and you're like, "Hey, I'm going to be joyous even in the present moment when things suck, when I don't feel like my needs are taken care of, I'm still going to have joy in this moment." Then everything else kind of flowed, right? So I just am a believer of that.
Eckhart Tolle talks about how we don't need more than 15 minutes a day of worrying about a problem to solve it.
Yeah.
Like if you think about a problem 15 minutes a day, that's all you need to solve it. If you're thinking about it beyond 15 minutes, you're just like wasting our time and energy when you could be enjoying the present, right? Mm-hmm. And so we all have problems. No one doesn't, right? That's just the way life is. Mm-hmm. But he recommends setting aside a chunk of time every day. That this is my 15 minutes to think of my problems. Yeah. And the rest of the day, if they come up, just kind of like imagine putting them on a shelf and be like, "I'll get those down in my 15 minutes.
Yep.
I'll put them on my shelf for now." And then just be like, "Okay, what's happening right now? Do I enjoy it?" Like I'm laughing.
Yeah.
And it makes me, when you were talking about like the source of life, right? Is money my source of life, or is God my source of life?
Yeah.
It got me thinking about laughter even more. We were talking about how when you laugh, the way it moves your head, things like opens up your crown, and that's like symbolic of opening up your head to God.
I love that. Yeah.
And then you also have, a lot of traditions. There's this tradition that comes up that like the belly is like the source of energy. Right. I mean, the belly is like where our body literally digests food. Right. And then, you froze for me.
Oh, am I frozen? Am I here?
But I can hear you though. So that's cool. Okay.
I'm here. I swear I'm here.
Yay. So our bodies are literally digest food, right. Okay. In our belly. But then also, in like the Chinese, in some of the Chinese traditions, your lower dantian is seen as like this source of energy, right?
Yeah.
And then like in the Hindu traditions, it's like your solar plexus chakra is like
Yep.
the source of spiritual energy for your body. So there's these different traditions that have like the belly is like where the energy comes from.
Yeah.
And like when you sing, if you try to take your energy like from your chest, you won't sing well. You got to take it from your belly, right? And then you'll have power, right? So it's like this belly power. And I feel like when we're laughing, not only is it getting our crown connected to God, but it's also like it comes from your belly, right?
Yeah,
It's like a cool laugh comes from your belly. And it's like there's something about laughing that just like teaches your body to be aligned in the best ways.
Yeah.
And so your belly, you go to your belly and you're like, oh, I'm laughing in my belly. And you're like drawing from like the real source of power.
Yeah.
Instead of, because you're in the present, drawing from real source of power instead of these like inadequate, you try to draw power from, like money or something. Right.
Yeah. And where you draw your power from, that's like a whole other conversation that we can have another time, because I can go on and on about that topic. So, yeah.
Well, we're getting to the end of our time here, as you just insinuated. Awesome. So like Charan, what on this topic of like healing power of laughter, and I think we've been on topic, but it's kind of like it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of weaved a little bit.
It's all about laughter and joy, right? Mm-hmm. And how to find that state. So and I've learned from this that personally, I think I'm gonna go have my moment today, or maybe I'll have it right now with all of you. This moment where I'm gonna, you had a moment where you said I'm gonna be an actor. Well, like I'm like having my declaration of independence, right? Where I'm saying like I'm gonna stop being heavy. I'm going to be laughter.
Yeah, I love it.
Which is more important than any job I might have. I'm going to be laughter, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying that to my body right now and saying, "Hey, body, you here? This is where we're going." Right?
Yeah, that's a good place to be. Yeah.
What are your final thoughts? Like, if you have let's say that this is the last chance you're gonna get to talk to anyone else. Yeah. You have your last thoughts you have to say about laughter. What's your final thoughts you want to say?
I would just say, I think one of the biggest things that I heard this quote once, and it's like always stuck with me. It's like so no matter where you go in life, no matter what you do, I always want you to remember something. And frankly, I don't even care what it is. Just remember something. Just keep your mind active. That's all. I'm just kidding. No. Like, well, I don't know. Like, I think I would just say this. Like, don't take life so seriously, right? Like, find ways to laugh at yourself and find ways to have joy and find ways to just kind of to be present and to have fun. Can I share one final story? Actually, like the story popped up in my brain.
Yeah, go for it.
Real quick. When I was about 12-ish or 13. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I must have been 13 when this happened. My parents had just divorced. My dad, my brother, and I were staying in our bedroom, and we were like we were staying in the same room because it had like a fan on or something. My dad and my brother were on the bed. They were falling asleep. It was like midnight-ish or so, and I was sleeping in the sleeping bag on the ground. And I had this really interesting experience happen that like taught me a lot about life. It was about midnight, and I couldn't sleep for whatever reason. It was summertime though, so I didn't have any responsibilities of school or whatever, like anything like that. So I was okay with that. So I'm laying down and I'm stretching. So I'm not like seeing like my arms. I'm just stretching them above my head, right? Just kind of stretching them and whatnot. And while I'm stretching, I suddenly feel someone come and grab my right wrist. Okay, like. Boom, just grab it and like hold on and not let go. And it freaked the crap out. Okay. As it should, right? And I'm like, I did like one of those sucking screams, like the, like type of things. And then when I finally got some oxygen back, I'm like, Dad or Sareth is like what I yelled out pretty loud. And Sareth is my younger brother and my dad. And so I'm like, Sareth, I know it's you because it's my kid brother that would like stoop so low to like freak me out and like grab my hand when I'm in the middle of the night. But the hand felt bigger, did not feel like my brother. So then I'm like, logical conclusion, it's got to be dad. I'm like, dad? Because I thought, he may have gotten up to get some water or something and saw his son sleeping or not being able to sleep. He's like, oh, I'll freak my son out for no good reason. Still, no response. And it was like eerily silent. And I knew, like, in this moment of fear, in this moment of total uncertainty, total vulnerability, I had to face my fears. And so I slowly started pulling my arm down, to see who this was. And I saw this hand still holding on, to my right wrist. And so I followed it. And it led to my left arm. Apparently my left arm fell asleep and it grabbed my right wrist and I started freaking myself out for no good reason. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. And I was like, if this is how the rest of my life is going to go, I am doomed, but here's the deal. It taught me a ton of lessons at that very moment. When we freak ourselves out or we get scared about life, a lot of times we're the ones holding ourselves back, right? I literally was holding myself back at that moment, right? And then the other thing I felt was, instant joy and laughter and ridiculousness, right? But I feel like laughter is a great way to overcome our sense of fear and our sense of the unknown. Like, think back to 2020 when COVID came, and it was a very, very uncertain time for people, right? There is no way someone could have told me, hey, a virus is going to come out, and in 2019, if someone told me, hey, a virus is going to come out that's going to shut the entire world down and people are going to be freaking out if they had toilet paper or not. I'm like, are you out of your mind? And yet, if we were to look back on 2020, you'd be like, oh my gosh, like that literally went down that way. You know what I mean? And so I think it's super important to realize that, like, hey, you know what? Life can be very uncertain, can be very confusing, can be very fearful. And during those uncertain times, I think those are the times that we need to laugh the most. Like, genuinely laugh, find ways to, like, genuinely find things funny. Find ways to be silly with your kids or with whomever, because that's when you can kind of maintain and cultivate this kind of bubble of joy, not being unrealistic of the dangers. I mean, of course, like, I'm not saying, avoid, like, there's no dangerous situations, but fear is really in our mind, right? Danger does exist, but like, in that case, like, you can still find laughter and you can still find joy and make that the active choice when you're facing things that are scary. So that would be my final thoughts.
And I think that we've talked a lot about God and this thing, mm-hmm. and what God can create. And I'm just thinking, like, if every day you just say, hey, God, can you give me something to laugh about today?
Oh, I like that. That's a good prayer. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'll happen. I think, that's pretty easy for God to do.
Yes, he can, because he's hilarious. He is hilarious. So.
And I know that's true from my own experiences. Awesome. Well, Charan, we've gone this whole time, and the lover of dad jokes hasn't shared a single dad joke. Do you have one to put us off to leave with?
I'm trying to think here. Well,
you said not to do this, but
God always tells me that when we get rid of drama and heaviness and all that stuff, it's a real flush of emotions. And because he knows how much I love movies, he likes to call that a theatrical release.
What?
He likes to call it a theatrical release.
Oh.
Yeah. That was from him. That literally was from God to me once. He's like, hey, it's time for another theatrical release, buddy. So there you go.
There you go. God's a funny guy.
Yes,
God's a very funny guy.
Yes.
I know that's true. Well, thank you, Charan, for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
You too.
Okay. Bye.